third and the final day of the first ever IHIF Asia at the fantastic Regent Hotel in Hong Kong. I'm delighted to be joined here by IB Saravanan, our market leader of QuestX Asia, and of course Alexi Kajabi, the President of Travel, Wellness and Hospitality at QuestX. And I'm of course Joe Stather, the Vice President and Market Leader of the Operational Real Estate team. I think before we get into a recap of what has been a terrific 3 days and a great event, it's probably worth just sharing with you all what we ultimately set out to do here with the first IHIF Asia. So IB, maybe you'd like to explain that.
Thank you, Joe. With Global South gaining importance across the world about the growing importance in its economy and GDP and the growing middle class and the QuestX has long been asked by the market to bring a very credible pedigree event for the investment, both inbound and outbound activity for hospitality. That's what we actually wanted to achieve. And I believe with the market's active participation in the first year, we were exactly able to achieve that.
Thanks, IB. And of course, IHIF is a global series now. The Hospitality Forum being really at the pinnacle of investment events for this sector. Alexi, how does this fold into the overall IHIF portfolio, and what value does it bring to those followers of IHIF over the last 25 years?
Yeah, well, you know, the hospitality sector is a global market, right? Cross-border investment has ranged in the years past to nearly half of all cross-border hotel transactions. So capital is fluid, as well as demand is fluid, right? You have customers or travelers flying all around the world for both business and travel. Obviously the pandemic hurt that, but what we've seen since the pandemic is an incredible return of travel. And Asia really was one of the last regions to come back. So this market is absolutely booming, and we hear from both our sponsors as well as the investors in our investor council as part of the IHIF platform that ultimately this region is as core to their investment mandates as is the US and Europe, right? So it is a growing market, it's got absolutely good fundamentals, and it's not just a Chinese story anymore, right? You've got countries like Indonesia, you've got countries like India, you have Southeast Asia that's booming. And so there is a demand that's both intra-region as well as external or international, inbound and outbound. And that for us is bringing IHIF, you know, to your question, to the region is just an immense opportunity to connect the industry, inform them with what are the trends, what are the opportunities, and really bring in an international audience to the region to understand how to invest, where to invest, and where those opportunities are. And you just saw an incredible dynamic connection of both local, regional, and international investors, operators, advisors, and the like.
Absolutely, and you touched on it there, but I think the investment capital is absolutely at the core of what we do here in this portfolio. It's been wonderful to see, I think, so many investors that we typically partner with, perhaps because they're looking at the outbound opportunity in markets like Europe or the US, or indeed some of our partners that are domiciled or based in Europe or the US, coming into Asia. I think there's such a wonderful opportunity there, whether you're raising capital, whether you're looking for inspiration on how to better deploy capital or asset manage. It's great to see our audience making use of all three of these wonderful and leading events within each of their respective regions.
Indeed.
I think what we have heard across the program over the last few days, and not to jump the gun on this, but is really the importance of local though. It's absolutely critical for many of our investors and asset managers here that they have a local on the ground presence, such as the diverse and intricate nature of the region and the individual characteristics of many of the markets that we've covered as part of this Asia Pacific conference. Now, that's really reflected in the way that we've gone about bringing this conference to the market as well, IB. Tell us a bit about the local office here for QuestX down in Asia and how that's been really critical in the success of this event.
Absolutely, Joe. Just a year ago when QuestX and our hospitality group decided to have this particular event launched in Asia, our Singapore office, which is having multiple working arms within the Philippines, Hong Kong, and even up to Turkey and other parts of India, we decided to kind of work with the local partners very early into the campaign by setting a very high standards of getting the international experts as well as the regional and countrywide experts into the discussion. We managed to have 2 advisory board meetings very early into the discussion, and which comprised around 48 experts run across Singapore and Hong Kong. They were a good mix of asset classes, segments, and investors, and owners and operators. And the lot of feedback which we derived from the market felt a very clear need that we are justified in bringing such a high pedigree event. And that industry's input, we actually went about developing the content.
And I think when we're dealing with investors that are not just private equity or institutional style of capital, but high net worth individuals, sovereign wealth funds, family offices, much of that is about relationship building to drive the engagement and ensure that they are present here at IHIF, as compelling as the overall offer is. And again, I think that's a dynamic that the local team has really been able to leverage, correct?
Absolutely. In year one, I would be really very happy and proud to announce that we managed to get participants from 28 countries, and then 17 of them coming from APAC, from a very diverse portfolio. Much like what we have been mentioned by our vice president here and group president, the continent itself is very fragmented, very diverse, but has a lot of potential. But building relationship into these markets and deep into the continent, like in China, in India, in Thailand, it's going to be a challenge, and that's what we love. In QuestX, that's what we love, and we try to put the best foot forward to bring the investors and understand, like what Alexei was mentioning just a while ago, to understand the best practices. And it was not easy, Joe. So the last 1 year, actually, we have been traveling to various countries deep into mainland China, into India, into Australia, into Indonesia, into Malaysia, and then building partnerships and understanding their local purchase needs, consumption needs, the changes, and what mega projects are coming from the governments, and where the investment's going next. And that, I believe, IHIF Asia was able to deliver today.
And just for clarity, 185 investors overall at this wonderful event, representing 40% of the audience. So talk about an investment forum with investors at the core. This is an event that really delivered on that. So let's shift gears a little bit and get into the program. We've had over 90 speakers. Alexei, you've had the pleasure of interviewing a number of them here on the news desk and also sitting in the audience and immersing yourself in some of that fantastic content. What have your highlights been?
Yeah, well, I think it was great, as we always do, to start off with the data and truly understand what are where are the opportunities, where the market is moving, and we saw really down to detail both RevPAR and GoPAR, what markets are, how the markets are performing, and again, to IB's point, it's a very diverse market, right? So we covered that I think both broadly as well as specifically from the markets. That gave, I think, everyone a lot of data and a lot of understanding to then go deeper into the issues. Again, to sort of stay high, having the CEOs, Gary Rosen of Accor, Alan Watts of Hilton, and then of course Kenneth McPherson from IHG, really gave, I think, a great understanding as to those three flagship brands, what their strategies are in the region. And again, I think to IB's point, as much as QuestX Asia is immersed in the region with boots on the ground, these are big companies with local offices, not just in China, but around the region. And they're seeing immense opportunities, again, not just in the luxury managed types of assets, which typically have really been the cornerstone of development in the region for the last 20 years as it pertains to the international brands. But what we're seeing now is a diversity of chain scales, right? And not just the chain scales, going from luxury to upper upscale, mid-scale, lifestyle, and even economy and extended stay in some areas. But it's also then the diversity of operating models. You're really seeing an increase of the franchise model, which is clear to the maturation of the market. We've seen it in the US, obviously. We're seeing it in Europe for the last 15 years. And so you're bringing in then expertise in operations, which is really an incredible, I think, opportunity, again, for this market, which is typically fragmented, to allow for institutional capital or capital that is not used to investing in the asset class to come in, because you have a broad base of specialized operators, whether that be the brands, but increasingly these white label third-party operators. So that was really interesting to see, and I think it was frankly an indication of how vibrant this market is, right? So I thought that was, we had a lot of content that I thought got deeper into the diversity of the markets, the diversity of the capital, and the diversity of the operating models. I thought the other bit though is we've really brought in, you know, country roundtables ranging from Japan to the Philippines to India, and we saw an incredible amount of engagement with that type of content, which again shows that the capital is not just focused on one part of the market, but it's really dispersing and diverse and looking for opportunities across APAC. So I thought that was a great way to start the content or the program, but more importantly, I was really impressed by the diversity of opinion and the specialization that came particularly in operating models and where those opportunities may lie.
Absolutely, and just coming back to the point you raised around formats, I mean, we really have had a wealth of different ways in which we've sought to connect the audience with information and with the experts in different fields. And you know, I think the roundtables that you mentioned, what a wonderful opportunity for many of the destinations to have a two-way conversation. It's not just an audience that's on receive mode here. There's an opportunity to contribute, to add to the debate, the discussion, and it means that everybody goes away having learned something that they can go and implement within their own respective organisation. IB, what have the programme highlights been for you?
In my opinion, actually, we brought the lack of homogeneity into the discussion. And then we wanted the audience comprising of owners, developers, investors, and other participants who are contributing to the growth of investment into the country, understand how they can learn from each other and the best practices like what Alexi was mentioning with the franchisee, the extended stay, the deal-making differentiations, which is existing in Europe and other places, can benefit this particular industry stabilization faster. So those areas, in my opinion, over the last 2 days, 2.5 days, was making a great wave. And we have been listening to the people who are taking part in Japan Roundtable, or the wellness, or Southeast Asia's resort destinations, absolutely delighted with the type of content what we are providing. There are two parts to that. We were creating content not only by an expert presenting on the opportunities in that country, but we are also bringing together a developer, an owner, a consultant, and a broker together on specific markets' growth opportunities, which in my opinion gives a very, very diverse perspective.
I would also add that this is an event where we've introduced again our adjacent spaces concept, which is looking beyond just hotels and hospitality, recognising that that's ultimately where the capital is starting to look for product in a way to diversify their exposure. Alexi, do you want to talk us through the adjacent spaces piece a little bit?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it is operational real estate, right? It's a building that is, you have an owner and then you have an operating model within that asset. And we've focused on that for years at IHIF and including NYU now. This market is as advanced and has as much opportunity in other forms of operating real estate as we've seen in those other markets. Primarily, I think the opportunity, as we've discussed, is really about student housing. And we've seen a lot of interest in that, but also there's other operating models that we're seeing being brought to the program, but also certainly to the opportunities, right? And again, it's not just in one market, but this is a vibrant market with a lot of diversity, and there are many different ways to be operating assets. We're seeing a lot of repurposing and retrofitting of assets. I mean, certainly office is as challenged here as it is in the US. Or it is in Europe for that matter. So there's a lot of creativity in the region, as we've seen in some other markets, around how to look at the best use, or the best purpose of that building, of that built asset, depending on the different demand drivers that are out there. So again, it's not just, you know, a guest staying for 3 nights in this type of managed luxury hotel. You're seeing a whole range of diverse assets and operating models across the region, which I think is, again, shows to the vibrancy of the opportunity and shows to some of the creativity that is local, it's homegrown, and I think that was really exciting to see.
I also think a testament to that was the depth of the audience that we saw in the branded residences session, where we had, frankly, a great panel comprising hospitality brands, non-hospitality brands, and a leading branded residential advisor in Savills, taking that discussion forward. So that absolutely was a highlight. You know, just a quick run through the program, I think, and a recap for those that sadly weren't able to join us here. From a data point of view, I think we heard that there is still phenomenal runway in terms of demand growth. I mean, Alan Watts on the CEO panel absolutely celebrating the strength of the demographics and how that gives great optimism for growth, not just in the short term, but the long term as well. With the increasing wealth and the increasing domestic and intra-regional travel, something at Hilton that they're definitely looking to dig into. Gary Rosen came up with a great quote, Accor's CEO for Greater China, saying that China is the next China. Everybody's looking for the next China, but he reckons it's right there in the country itself. Yeah. We've heard from family offices over the course of the last few days. Really wonderful to hear how they can pivot their investment approach from core through to opportunistic to build a balanced portfolio, and how deals can frankly be done over the dinner table when it's very much a family affair. I think we got a lot of optimism from the economists that we had opening the show, of course, and even the operating agreements, to your point earlier, Alexi, a panel that we hear all too often at investment events, and sometimes it gets criticised for the debate not moving on quick enough, but in a region where you're starting to see an increase in franchising, an increase in third-party operators, the room was full for that particular session, and it did not disappoint. So loads going on here at IHIF Asia, and I think what is absolutely key, and we're seeing this across our events, is the importance of experience. It's not just people coming here to network and to learn, but it's also about coming and having a really good time with your contemporaries and your peers in the industry. How has the venue helped us fulfill that, Alexi?
Well, this is an iconic venue right on Victoria Harbour, right, with views of Hong Kong, across the harbour. It's recently reopened as a region. It was the Intercontinental before, and it is just one of the most iconic venues in all of Asia to begin with. But it is, hospitality has a real special place in Asia, right? I mean, there is something that is Asian hospitality. It's not forced, it's not contrived, it's authentic, it's sincere. And I think we've all been delighted. We've been delighted as the organizers, but more importantly, our customers, our delegates, our sponsors have all raved about the hospitality, the food, the experiences. We had a boat tour on the harbor a couple of nights ago. There's been parties and gatherings, as there always is. IHG did a owner's dinner here on the property. Accor had a party, Hilton had a gathering. There's a lot of hotels right around us, right? We've got the Peninsula, we've got the Sheraton, we've got the Mondrian, and that's just to name a few. So the experience is critical, right? I mean, we are in the hospitality industry. We're bringing hospitality leaders. So anything from the food to the quality of the production to the AV to the different opportunities for people to, sit around the venue overlooking the harbor, the cafe or the restaurant alongside the harbor has been absolutely heaving with people throughout the last 3 days of just having meetings, engaging, and that's where deals are either made or that's where deals are conceived, right? So for us to be able to provide, I think, the platform for some really sincere Asian hospitality and do it in the way that we do it, in Europe, in New York, but obviously with that local flavor, it's absolutely, I think, created a really fun but enjoyable environment for what has been a real action-packed 3 days. I mean, there's, to your point, 90 speakers, 185 investors, $216 billion of hotel assets under management in the room. I mean, people are here to do business, but at the same time, people are here to enjoy, learn. They're here to learn, and they're here to be inspired, and I think we achieved that.
And IB, you were really passionate about ensuring this was an event that was deeply rooted in the Asia market and reflected the Asia market. Tell us a little bit about that.
Joe, right from the date of conceptualizing this particular event, we were very clear that we are going to bring an Asian flavor with a very strong pedigree of IHIF EMEA. So the first step we wanted to do was, which are the growing economies in the region? Indonesia is one, India is another. Hong Kong is very stable in the investment and has its own culture and tradition to offer. So when we have set forth, we have started working with the local partners like Hong Kong Tourism Board, I must name them here, and Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy in Indonesia. And then we also started discussing with Maldives and other countries in the region. And what happened was a readiness, a willingness, like what Joe was mentioning, to showcase the Asian flavor to the international and the regional participants here. So when that happened, we started this particular conference with a broad content focus. But then slowly everything started filling into place, and we started within the Lion Dance, which was wishing everyone an auspicious start and a great eventful year for hospitality investment in the region. And then we had, like Alexi was mentioning, we went on a cruise tour organized by Hong Kong Tourism Board. It was wonderful, a lot of deal making, a lot of discussions, 80 people on board comprising international participants. And the other day we had a cultural performance of 5 regional dancers and singing from Indonesia. To sum it up, there is more coming up your way for 2025 in this regard.
Absolutely, and I think that's a really wonderful segue into the close. So that's it for IHIF Asia here in Hong Kong. We are absolutely excited and thrilled to be back here in 2025 and to kick off the planning with the support of our advisory board and all of the feedback that we've gathered over the course of the last 3 days. If you're interested in the IHIF series, we will be back in 2025, back in Berlin for the 26th International Hospitality Investment Forum, and that's taking place on the 31st of March to the 2nd of April. We'll see you there.
We'll see you there.